Independent National Electoral Commission reassures all eligible Nigerians of getting their permanent voter card before the 2019 general election.
Senate seeks lasting solution to wanton killings in the country as House calls for rescue of remaining Chibok girls.
International Monetary Fund maintains sound economic policies remain key to harnessing global growth prospects.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we focus on the 2018 Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, CHOGO.
Yes, the ongoing Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, also known as CHOGM 2018, is the 25th meeting of the Heads of Government of the Commonwealth of Nations. It is the first time the event will be holding in the UK since 1997.
Well, Sean, the meeting with the team, rather towards our common future, is taking place under the chairmanship of the British Prime Minister, Theresa May. Now, according to the Commonwealth Secretariat, the theme was chosen because member states face common challenges such as weak global trade and investment flows, new cross-border security threats, the effects of climate change of small and other vulnerable states, threats to shared values of democracy, good governance and inclusivity as set out in the Commonwealth Charter.
Yes, Kingsley. Now, the Commonwealth, a club of mostly former British colonies, is the only plurilateral organization in the world whose membership spans the globe, with 53 member countries spread across Africa, Asia, the Caribbean, the Americas, Europe and the Pacific.
Now, several issues are expected to take center stage at the ongoing meeting. For instance, climate change will push an additional 100 million people across the world into poverty by year 2030, with 38 of the 53 members of the Commonwealth belonging to the vulnerable states. Now, it's also projected that other natural disasters will affect some 28 million people, causing economic losses of almost $8 billion.
To this end, Kingsley, the United Kingdom government yesterday pledged to provide more funding to help developing countries in the Commonwealth to cut their emissions and prepare for the impacts of climate change.
The UK government said it will provide an extra £8 million for climate action and mitigation projects around the world. Now, about £3.5 million is expected to go towards extending the 2050 calculator technology, which helps countries develop greenhouse gas strategies, while another £1.2 billion will go to help Pacific countries cut their carbon emissions.
CHOGM also provides opportunities to address other issues that have relevance to the several countries in the region. Among the issues to be discussed are trade and prosperity in a post-Brexit world, human rights, democracy and good governance, security, terrorism and common values, and of course the renewal of the Commonwealth, particularly through its young people. There will also be side meetings for business, civil society, women and youth, and many cultural and ancillary events.
Well, Sean, as you very well know, Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari had a closed-door meeting with the British Prime Minister on Monday to discuss Nigeria-British relations. Now, the two leaders are also expected to meet on the sidelines of the ongoing events, that's to say, in the course of the heads of government meeting at the Commonwealth. So, what are the issues that indeed affect Nigeria directly that will be on the front burner at the CHOGM? And what will Nigeria benefit from the meeting in terms of takeaways by way of resolutions? These are some of the talking points as we examine CHOGM 2018 in our discussion segment today. This is Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live on the network service of Africa's largest television network, the Nigerian Television Authority. Thank you for being with us today. My name is Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Seun Olagunju as I join my colleague Kingsley to welcome you to, and as usual, we shall bring you our companion segments, which include the newspaper review, business, sports, foreign and entertainment news. But for now, let's take the news highlights. Binta Aliyu Sumonu will be our guide this morning. Bintu, how are you this morning? It's over to you.
Well, I'm good, and how are you too? Good morning and welcome to the morning news. The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has reassured that all eligible Nigerian voters that registered will get their permanent voters card before the 2019 general elections. INEC Chairman Professor Mahmoud Yakubu stated this while swearing in 7 new resident electoral commissioners in Abuja.
Reassured the public that for those who registered in 2017, their PVCs will be ready for collection in the first week of May 2018. That is in the next few weeks.
Finding a lasting solution to the killings in various states have once again dominated proceedings on the floor of the Senate. National Assembly correspondent Dennis Adekunle reports that this lengthy discourse was prompted by a point of order raised by Senator representing Nasarawa South, Suleiman Adokwe.
Throughout the weekend and up to the moment of speaking, have unleashed terrorist mayhem across the southern senatorial district of Nasarawa State.
If we need international support, we should say so on time.
My heart bleeds, particularly where we find ourselves as a nation.
Meanwhile, at the House of Representatives, plenary was dedicated in marking 4-year anniversary of the abduction of the 219 schoolgirls from Chibok. In a motion of urgent public importance by the member representing Chibok, Asabe Velita Bashir, the legislators called on authorities to intensify efforts towards rescuing the remaining girls.
This House commends the urgency with which the federal government handled negotiation and the release of the adopted Dapchi girls. This House is concerned about the fate.
We pray that those girls, particularly those of them that are still alive, we pray that they will return to us safely.
Still talking security, the Air Task Force of Operation Lafia Doli has successfully destroyed some Boko Haram terrorists at a location 12 kilometers east of Aregi in the Lake Chad region. A statement by the Director of the Public Relations and Information of the Nigerian Air Force, Air Vice Marshal Olatokunbo Adesanya, indicates that enough intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance aircraft had discovered Boko Haram terrorist activities with some vehicles mounted with guns in the location. Accordingly, a NAV Mi-35M helicopter gunship was detailed to conduct air interdiction strikes to take out the targets. Battle damage assessment reveals that at the end of the air interdiction strikes, activities of the Boko Haram terrorists were completely paralyzed. The Nigerian Air Force says it will continue to provide adequate air support through the Air Task Force of Operation Lafia Doli by conducting a range of air operations to create a necessary environment for ground troops to continue apace. Now, the global economy has continued to show broad-based momentum despite uncertainties. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, at its 2018 spring meeting maintains that sound economic policies and multilateral cooperation remain key to harnessing global growth prospects.
Conditions, and in many cases, countries are putting in place fiscal adjustment plans which will strengthen buffers and leave them better equipped to deal with the next downturn that comes.
The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission has recovered 57 million naira ecological fund alleged to have been laundered in Niger State. EFCC's counsel disclosed this in an interview at the Federal High Court, Mina, where former Governor of Niger State, Dr. Muazu Babangida Aliyu, and Umar Mohammed Nasku are standing trial in respect of the money.
The only person who has not refunded any money yet is first defender, that is the governor, the former governor. But the second defender, who is the immediate past PDP governorship aspirant, has refunded.
My client didn't refund any money.
And that's the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Kinsley and Sean after this break.
Notably youth unemployment, features strongly in our party's manifesto. We intend to attack the problem frontally through revival of agriculture,
The 30K is going a long way. Actually, I bought an acre of land for 60K like 2012, and presently I have a cassava farm and a yam farm.
Reorganized, trained, and fully equipped, we are the new improved Nigeria Police Force. We fight crime. We bust syndicates. Whatever the crime, wherever the hideout, the Nigeria Police Force will get you busted. Stop kidnapping, armed robbery, murder, pipeline vandalism, and other criminal activities. Be productive. Be security conscious. Join the police force to secure your life and property. This message is from the Nigeria Police Force Public Relations Department.
Go to my son's room and get pregnant.
Countless women suffer under the misconception that when a woman is childless or fails to conceive within the clock time set for her by family and society, then it must be the woman's fault.
Enough is enough. She must leave my son's house.
So childless women suffer the pains of childlessness, and they also suffer the rejection of family and blame of society. This problem is placed side by side with the issue of those who sell their babies.
You did what?
I don't sell my picking.
In this episode, titled Childless Wives, join us this week as a rib-cracking comedy takes a semi-comic look at issues of childlessness and child harvesting.
I want to get pregnant as easily as you do it. And I swear by my life, I will die for my child.
Over and
Brought to you by Glow.
The largest data network, Glow Unlimited.
Enjoy fruity goodness for every occasion with Five Alive, now in new flavors and varieties.
Kinde suffers from indigestion. His twin Taiyi suffers from heartburn. Sometimes it's the other way around, or both. That's why they use Gaviscon Double Action. It soothes within 3 minutes and lasts for up to 4 hours. For double relief from heartburn and indigestion, Gaviscon Double Action.
Cadbury Hot Chocolate 3-in-1, a delicious combination of rich cocoa and wholesome goodness of milk. Just add hot water to get an instant chocolatey treat. Cadbury Hot Chocolate 3-in-1. Just add hot water.
Thanks for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria, coming to you on NTA Network. Now, talking business. Nigeria's Brent crude crosses $72 mark as production hits 1.81 million barrels per day, making it the highest point since 2014 before the global fall in prices of crude oil. All the details of this and more with Chimobi Walter Naji.
I'm Chimobi Walter Naji with the business news at this hour. As Nigerians await the passage and signing of the 2018 budget, the Minister of State, Budget and National Planning, Mrs. Zainab Ahmed, recently gave a brief insight on the issues around the budget. According to her, the 2017 budget implementation is still ongoing on the capital side, but recurrent expenditure and service personnel has been implemented almost 100%. The capital budget releases as at yesterday is at an average of 50% because implementation will be measured after the budget year closes out. The minister confirmed that the 2018 budget preparation is at its final stage in the National Assembly and should be passed by the end of April for transmission to the President. President Muhammadu Buhari presented the 2018 budget to the National Assembly in November 2017 with the size of 8.6 trillion naira, retaining 30% for capital expenditure and 70% for recurrent expenditure. Nigeria's Brent crude crosses $72 mark. Production has hit $1.81 million per day, making it the highest point since 2014 before the global fall in prices of crude oil. Nigeria's crude oil production increased from 1.792 million barrels per day in February to 1.810 million barrels per day in March. OPEC and allies, including Russia, are keeping crude oil supply limits in place in 2018 to reduce a price-denting glut of oil held in inventories. Also, the United States pledged recently that missiles would be fired at Syria, and this is said to have threatened crude oil supply levels, thereby leading to higher oil prices. Nigeria's Bonny Light attained its highest level at $72.73 per barrel, which is a little lower than Brent crude oil, which sold for $72.58 per barrel during the trading hours on Friday. OPEC crude oil production dropped by over 201,000 barrels per day in March over the previous months, while production mainly decreased in Angola, Venezuela, Algeria, and Saudi Arabia. A Swiss pharmaceutical company is to inject $100 million from malaria drug research in Nigeria. The funding over the next 5 years is expected to boost research into new treatments for malaria, which is a mosquito-borne disease with a huge negative impact that killed about 445,000 people in 2016. In a bid to redress the burden carried by African countries in the fight against malaria parasite, the company said it would establish a strategy aimed at ensuring equitable pricing, further help expand access to treatments for children with malaria. Deaths occasioned by the scourge of malaria dropped by over 60% from 2000 to 2015. Resistance to treatments presents the biggest threat to the incredible progress that has been made in the fight against malaria in the past 20 years. And to equities market, stock exchange finished Tuesday trading on a bullish note, appreciating by 0.63% to close at 40,786.68 basis points. Here is a graphic summary. And that's the business news. I'm Chimobi Walter Naji. Good morning, Nigeria continues.
For the business package. Next for us now, we'll take a look at the headlines on the front pages of some of today's newspapers.
Our regular newspaper reviewer, Bayo Toyibi, is in the studio. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Bayo.
Good morning. Good morning, Kingsley. And good morning, Nigeria.
Bayo, pleasure having you. I don't know, was it raining already by the time you got to the studios?
Threatening to rain.
Threatening to.
You did the better because those of us are into farming. We want the rain to come down.
That's right. Well, I think it might be a good year
yes.
In terms of rainfall, adequate rainfall, timely too. The skies were overcast just before we started the program. So we have a number of stories. There are stories come onto the front pages of the papers, matters on security and reactions thereto. Let's take a look at the Punch newspaper, which is our first story as lead. Punch newspaper says below the nameplates with a double-decker headline and two riders. We may short National Assembly to help Buhari end killings. That's according to Ekweremadu, who is Deputy Senate President. Nasarawa killings, that's the first rider. IDP's stone governance convoy. And 20 herdsmen attack Benue community, kill 4. That's the rider. And then the photographs that you have on the front page of the Punch there, they are the displays by the Special Military Forces at the ongoing African Land Forces Summit. And this took place, of course, those displays took place at Gwagwalada in Abuja yesterday. And just below that, there's one headline from the Punch newspaper, still on security. In fact, 2 headlines on security. Herdsmen attacks force 300,000 Benue pupils out of school. That story is in greater detail on page 8. And Kogi governor sets up panel to probe herdsmen crisis. Again, that story is in greater detail on page 8.
Yeah, as you said, Kingsley, the front pages of the newspapers are rife with insecurity issues. The Senate yesterday, or what happened at the National Assembly yesterday, is on the front pages of all the papers. So I have Daily Independent here, and the main headline, insecurity. Senate asks Buhari to sack service chiefs. Others. It has a number of riders, urges him to accept foreign offer of assistance, summons Emefiele Adeosun Danali over $462 million helicopter. Death toll rises to 78 in Nasarawa killings. IDPs pelt Governor Almakura's convoy with stones. Still on the front page of Daily Independent, IMF projects 1.9% growth for Nigeria, warns of crash in oil prices. And there's a political story there. APC fixes national convention for May 14. And then, yeah, that's what I have on the front page of Daily Independent.
Just Bayo, just before we bring in Bayo, I'm sure that you have the Sun newspaper, and the lead story is also on security issues. I also have the Nigerian Tribune. The lead story is also on security. Insecurity, that's the kicker. Senators call for sack of service chiefs. And then you have the story there, IDP spared governance convoy with stones in Nasarawa. Village head killed 300,000 children out of school in Benue. And police arrest female suicide bomber in Borno IDP camp. And another story, variant of the security issue from the Blueprint newspaper this time. It says with the leaks, that's the lead story, reps want explanation on $460 million U.S. arms deal. And then, of course, the call for the sack of service chiefs is also there as one of the riders to that story. Sheo, you want to take that up, the Daily
Sun? Yes, but it's mainly the same story. The main headline says, spate of killings, senators demand service chief sack as Senate sends tenure restriction, 11 other bills to president for assent. And then the other main story there is the IMF warns Nigeria over foreign debts. I think we need to talk about this security issue.
The concern about the bloodletting across the country is getting to everybody.
Yes.
And you recall that the senator representing Nasarawa was the one that raised the last killing that was reported in Nasarawa at the floor of the Senate. And the senators were incensed. That's why you are having that remarks and reaction that service chiefs should be sacked. And the Senate says they are going to close down to help the president fight the criminality across the country. I might see how they are going to do that. But the latest report is also still showing that we are still not out of the woods regarding the criminality. Benue and Nasarawa, there are claims that a gunman suspected to be a headsman have killed a village head of Game Tiev in local government area. But the Commissioner of Police in Benue says that he has not received such reports. Across in Nasarawa State, a policeman was killed during a clash that was said to be between headsmen and TV militia. And this happened in Kiana, local government area, and Obi. On Sunday, 8 deaths were recorded at Adudu village, and on Monday, 7 deaths were recorded in Obi. The police public relations officer in that area, Idrisu Kennedy, says that mobile policeman was killed in the course of his duty in the area. He lamented that politicians had hijacked the crisis and are fueling the situation. And the consequence of this crisis is what you earlier, the headline that Kingsley read. Over 3,000 people now are 300,000 of people now are out of school. Why? Their schools are being used as IDP camps. That is why they cannot go to school. And secondly, those of them whose villages and abodes have been attacked are now to be with their parents in the IDP camps and so cannot go to school. So it is critically affecting the number of children that are going to school across the country. You recall that the UN has raised serious alarm about the number of out-of-school children in Nigeria.
Yeah, Bayo, just still on the call by the senators for the sack of service chiefs, the basis for that call by the senator, by the Senate rather, had to do with the fact that they said, all right, we had a security summit earlier this year, and they discussed with the service chiefs, you know, who indicated whatever challenges and whatever issues they would take on to ensure that the country came under much greater peace. And that, of course, the senators are concerned that there would appear to be no positive responses as a result of that summit. I think that some patience is called for at this time, because you don't expect quick fixes to the widespread insecurity that you have in different parts of the country. The military itself is overstretched, because as a last count, I think we had them operating in 31 or 32 states of the Federation.
Yes, the police themselves have always complained that there are 300,000 men in the force. They have almost 50% of them attached to politicians. And so there are few policemen available to protect every single Nigerian. Then talking about the internal security challenges, it is primarily the duty of the police. But because the police is outstretched, the military have now had to come in. And they are currently involved in 32 states in one operation or the other, either fighting insurgency, fighting herdsmen in farmers' crashes, cattle rustling, militancy, pipe-down vandalization, and sometimes actually mounting roadblocks to check kidnapping and armed robbery. So, and the Senate has no choice. The concern led to the security summit. And if the service chief's responsibility is about security, and after they have discussed, and they must have told them in camera the measures they are taking and the challenges they are having, and they have not seen any positive development, naturally they will now call for a rethink about having a new set of persons. But like you said, security challenges are not matters of quick fixes.
Amidst all these insecurity issues, there's a good news there. IMF projects 1.9% growth on Daily Independent for Nigeria, warns of crash in oil prices, and they're also warning about foreign debts. So, you know, the IMF World Bank meeting is ongoing now, the spring meetings are ongoing, and everybody's talking about how to improve the world economy. It does have some correlation, if the economy is good, between a good economy and security.
Yeah, naturally, IMF periodically do their meeting and overview of the world economy. And specifically for us in Nigeria, the IMF had predicted that our growth rate was going to be about 1.9%. But now they have reviewed that upwards, that we should be expecting a growth rate of about 2.1, which is on the upswing, which means the economic impetuses are positive. However, they have also cautioned that oil prices are likely to remain in 2018 at about $62.31 per barrel. But however, in 2019, it is likely to drop to about $58.24 per barrel. So that is warning us ahead so that we can begin to address our economic imperatives in the perspective of a drop in oil flow. But however, they also pose advice and say that we should take advantage of the current upswing to ensure that there's infrastructure in the area of impetuses in the area of infrastructure, physical buffers, and then strengthen our economic reforms to steer a clear monetary policy. You recall that the monetary policy has been very regular and constant, and they are saying that they are not changing their strategy that is gradually pulling us out of the inflation. It is hoped that inflation rate could drop to single digit towards the end of the year.
Bayo, let's return to the front page of the Punch newspaper. Above the nameplate of the Punch newspaper, there are 3 headlines there, but I will take the middle one. Visa applicant gets 3-year jail term for lying about marital status. That story is on page 3 in greater detail. And then you come to the foot of the front page of the Punch newspaper, another headline there, one of the 3 headlines right at the foot of the front page. It says, Theresa May asks Nigeria and others to revoke same-sex laws. That's on page 7 in greater detail. And very quickly, to the Nigerian Tribune. The Nigerian Tribune, below the nameplate of the Nigerian Tribune, there's a headline there. You have a headline also on Theresa May calling for same-sex marriage in Nigeria and other Commonwealth countries. And Otun Olubadan pays 10 million naira to free kidnapped twins. That story is in greater detail on page 31. And the photograph on the front page of the Punch is from Lagos. That's the Ojota Ikeja axis. There's a dump site there. Once again, it's up in flames, and you can see the heavy pollution that is emitting from that dump site. That's the Ojota axis in Lagos.
Abayo, let's go to our editorial today. We are taking from the New Telegraph, and it's a worrisome issue that it's been highlighted here. Salvaging airports from abandoned aircraft. All over the world, international airports cast the first physical image of any country. It tells a lot about the orderliness or otherwise of the government in regulating its affairs. But while most countries try as much as possible to put forward a healthy image of their environment, Nigeria does the otherwise, as first-time visitors to the country are confronted with myriad of disorderliness. You find all sorts of issues at the airports.
But before I go to that, let's quickly talk about the issue that the Prime Minister of Great Britain raised, calling on countries of the Commonwealth that have made laws banning same-sex marriages to change their stand. He is, in fact, promising some carrot by way of support for any country who would work to change such laws. She also indicated 3 Commonwealth countries have actually changed their position. But Theresa May's declaration would have come as a shell shock for some of the delegations who are coming there, because on the religious basis and on cultural parameters, many of the Commonwealth countries don't see same-sex marriage as a taboo. And ironically, today is World Heritage Day, and the United Nations is calling on nations to uphold their cultural heritage. But now talking about the eyesore that abandoned aircrafts have become at the airport, you recall that the Federal Airports Authority took some serious measures and declared, gave in fact an ultimatum for the owners of such aircraft to evacuate them from the airport. But they hurriedly went to court and secured a court order to stop that challenge. But presently, there are over 100 of such abandoned aircraft that litter our airports around the country. I remember specifically many in Lagos. When I was at Benito, I saw some too, of former Okada Air and several others, including that of Albarca Air, that are still not in operational, but are littered at our airports. They not only constitute an eyesore, they are also a threat to airport security.
All right, Baya Toby, that's the much that we can take. Just before we go, let me just indicate, we can't see this on the screen now, but it's a story on page 14 of the Blueprint newspaper. You can take a look at it. Osun twin brothers jailed for organizing Indian Hemp Carnival. That's Osun State. Baya Toby, thank you for being with us. See you tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
All right, so that does it for this review this morning. We'll take a short break now. When we return, of course, we'll be taking on the Commonwealth's Heads of Government meeting 2018.
Hate speech is not a joke. It incites genocide and crimes against humanity. Most of Africa's civil wars are caused by hate speech from one tribe against another. We don't want it here. The Nigerian government stands firm against hate speech.
Under no conditions whatsoever should we tolerate or excuse or justify hate speech or hateful conduct of any kind, especially where such is illegal.
There's no doubt that the resurgent push for separatism, as well as the rising cases of ethnic and religious disharmony, are all traceable to the growing phenomenon of hate speech.
One nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
Nigeria, one nation, one people.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
Helen! Your kitchen gets 10 out of 10.
Thank you.
This also gets a 10. Should we see the toilet now?
Sure.
This gets just 1.
It is clean.
But not perfect 10.
Better than my detergent and bleach? Impossible.
Challenge? Try the new Apic 10X.
Compared to bleach and detergent, Apic sticker formulation removes yellow stains times better, giving you a sparkling clean toilet.
Wow.
Now you also take that
Harpic 10X challenge.
Also available in 200 ml pack.
Registration is now open for state and sports clubs to participate with free accommodation and feeding for athletes and officials on the basis of first come, first served at the first National Grassroots Sports Festival, Sports for All, to discover sport talent, develop future world champions, and rejuvenate sports in Nigeria. Date 19 to 29th of April 2018. Venue National Stadium Abuja, packages A and B. This is an opportunity for state governors to mobilize supporters and fans for their state through broadcast sponsorship and for companies to promote their brand. For broadcast sponsorship, contact Angelo Peter I. Elosia, Chairman and Chief Coordinator, or Nick Onyisi. Organizers, Grassroots International Sports Academy and LOP Worldwide Television. Endorsed by the Federal Ministry of Youth and Sports Development. Broadcast partner, NTA, the largest television network in Africa.
Chief. Good morning, sir. You are here already?
No, now my spirit day here. My body day for house. What kind of question is that? Were you not the one that fixed this meeting for 8 a.m.? You are now coming by 10 a.m. and start asking me jam questions.
But Chief, now, I'm sorry. Don't you also go late for meetings sometimes? You know now, African time.
No more African time. And no more pancaking of face during office hours. At the end of the day, we will lose valuable time. We will not make progress. If we want to move this nation forward, we must treat business as business and respect time. Change begins with me.
Thank you, sir. I'm sorry. Can we go for the meeting now, Chief?
Better.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, you're welcome back. But if you just joined us, it's Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. As we indicated, our subject matter for conversation this morning has to do with the ongoing Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting taking place in London. Let's join our correspondent, Mitari Ukme, for a backgrounder to the conversation.
The Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, CHOGOM, is a biennial meeting of the heads of government from all 53 Commonwealth nations. The United Kingdom is currently hosting the 25th Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in London with the theme Towards a Common Future. Member states, mostly former British colonies, will ponder on the relevance and competence of the Commonwealth to influence global and regional issues, especially on trade, security, and climate change. Strong advocacy for a Commonwealth that is responsive to global challenges and delivers a more prosperous, secure, and sustainable future for all its citizens, particularly its young people, is equally expected from member states. The impact of Brexit on the Commonwealth will also be on the front burner, and the implications for countries with strong ties with the United Kingdom, such as Nigeria. Prior to the commencement of the meeting, President Muhammadu Buhari held bilateral talks with British Prime Minister Theresa May, where he called for increased trade relations between Nigeria and the United Kingdom. The president specifically demanded for more influx of British companies and investments into Nigeria, in line with one of his administration's policy thrusts of reviving the nation's economy. Improved trade relations, as well as issues of military assistance on counter-insurgency operations and the cooperation of the Western powers in facilitating the recovery of looted funds, are expected to form part of Nigeria's interests at this year's meeting, in addition to other regional concerns. To what extent will this year's meeting revive the perceived diminishing influence of the Commonwealth? What are the stakes of African nations in the Commonwealth and a post-Brexit world? What will be Nigeria's expected take-home from this year's summit? Answers will be provided shortly by guests on Good Morning Nigeria.
Many thanks, Tyree, for that background report. Now, joining us to discuss the topic for our conversation In the studio now is Ambassador Bulus Lolo. He is a retired permanent secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Thank you for joining us, Ambassador. And also with us in the studio is Ambassador Akin Oyateru. He is Nigeria's former High Commissioner to Kenya with concurrent accreditation to the Seychelles, head of political desk in the UK, UNEP, and UN Habitat. Ambassador, thank you also for joining us.
Thank you for having me. All right, gentlemen, a pleasure once again to have you on Good Morning Nigeria. Let's begin with Ambassador Bulus Lolo. The members of the old club gathered again for the heads of government meeting, and we'll have a number of global issues, but they've also narrowed down their own theme for discourse. Tell us something about the state of the world and indeed the state of the Commonwealth while this meeting is ongoing.
Well, thank you and good morning all. The Commonwealth is having its 25th Heads of Government meeting in London. Should have been in Vanuatu, as you know, but they had to shift because of the unfortunate climatic incident that affected Vanuatu. You ask the state of the world, I would say it is in a state of flux. Flux because on many fronts there are challenges, whether you are looking at the global economy, where there is uncertainty now on the future of global trade with what America is doing. There is the issue of security around the globe. There is also the general issue, in fact, of climate change itself. With the advent of President Trump, there was a bit back on the gains that had been made during the Obama era. So there is uncertainty around the globe as this summit takes place with, as it would affect our country, a big strain on employment and opportunities. Look at the migration issues that we are having. So these and more will form part of the discourse, I believe, in London.
Yes, having given us the state of the world, Ambassador Yatero, I'll come to you now. How relevant then is the Commonwealth to, as of today, in today's world?
Well, the Commonwealth still continue to be relevant. This was the question that it asked itself at the CHOGM 2011 in Perth, when it had the report of the eminent persons group to draw up the Charter of the Commonwealth. And the main question is the Commonwealth still relevant? And the answer is yes. You have an association of 53 countries developing and developed from 6 continents who have had a shared past, colonial experience, trade and investment, social and cultural, educational. These are links that are not easy to sever, or links that are not easy to replace or to rebuild. What the Commonwealth has done is to change its focus, change its emphasis, and look at some old issues in new ways, and look at some other new emerging issues. Like my Ambassador Lolo mentioned, you look at the economy, look at the issue of security, cyber crime, cyber attack, but particularly the youth, because it was found that in the Commonwealth, you have almost over 50% in most countries are youth, those below the age of, 35, 18 to 35. Therefore, they will have to sharpen, their responses to issues, both domestic, national, and global. And if you have this coordinated sort of approach, then it becomes relevant. So the thing is, yes, you got this container. Is it still useful? Yes. It's as useful as what content you put in it and to what use you put it.
All right, Ambassador Oyatero, thanks a lot. Back again to Ambassador Lola. Is the Commonwealth waking up rather late to the global issues that also impact the 53 members of the Commonwealth? Some of the issues you ticked off, for instance, global trade, climate change, security, migration, the youth. And, let's take Africa, for instance. The members of the Commonwealth, Nigeria, is here heavily impacted by insecurity. You've also had a number of African countries. The migration issue is also been there. But until perhaps only lately, we've never heard the voice of the Commonwealth on these critical issues.
Well, yes, I like what Ambassador Oyatero said about the shift in the focus of the Commonwealth. Hitherto, it was more of a political grouping brought together by a common colonial past. But with non-British, ex-British colonies like Rwanda, Cameroon, and Mozambique voluntarily joining the Commonwealth, it has had in the 21st century to also change its focus. In the past, when they met at this CHOGM, they would have discussed different issues. But necessarily, yes. But don't forget that the platform under which the Commonwealth operates is such that you will not get to hear their voice like you would of African leaders that meet twice a year, the United Nations, where they meet annually, and other fora like that. But as to the response and whether it is timely or not, issues have been emergent of recent, and necessarily therefore, if you take terrorism, for instance, 10 years ago, we weren't quite dealing with terrorism as we have it today. Even trade, we were not dealing with trade as we are today. So as time goes by, the Commonwealth has been mutating. And I will add a point here that we may not know. Every year at the United Nations General Assembly, the Commonwealth meets on the fringe of the ongoing General Assembly. And what they do at those meetings is to articulate their position as a group and feed it into the decisions of the United Nations. So if you don't hear a distinct Commonwealth voice, it is not to suggest that they are not relevant or they are not pronouncing. But perhaps, yes, there is room for the Commonwealth to use its platform to be more visible, to be more proactive, and at the same time to join in agenda setting. This is the way I'll put it.
Ambassador Oyatero, your take on this?
No.
In terms of, if they're waking up rather late to the live issues around the globe.
The Commonwealth is not waking up rather late. Like I said, the CHOGM of 2011 was actually seized with the matter of reform of the Commonwealth, its institutions, and its activities, and how it delivers most of its, objectives. And the charter was adopted in 2012 and signed by the Queen in 2013. And if you look at the charter, it's actually the composites of all the declarations, principles, aspirations, and values. The Commonwealth has been very vocal when it comes to good governance. Yeah. When it comes to election, fair and free election, it played a very credible role in the Kenyan election of 2017, of which I was a member of the observer group. But the Commonwealth is not aggressive, because you have to know the nature. It's an association. It's not an organization. But its secretariat from time to time actually issues statement on its position on like counterterrorism, they have on cybercrime, and they played a very prominent role in 2008 when you had the Glen Eagles summit in the UK. The Commonwealth actually met behind, and most of the Commonwealth finance ministers actually came out with their own position and declaration. And then they partner a lot with the Bretton Woods institutions. There's a lot of partnering. They partner a lot with the Francophonie, but you see, they work quietly, slowly but steadily, and you then see the outcome. So they're not as vociferous as, other organizations, to say this and that. But like the Commonwealth you have in London now, there are side events, which you call the forums, where about 5,000 participants will be. You have the business forum, the youth forum, the women forum, and they come up with tangible and actionable plans.
I just would like you to explain something you said in passing. It said that the Commonwealth is an association, not an organization. Yes. What does that mean? Is it that it's not an international institution if we were to look at it in the realm of international law?
International institution It is, yes, it's an international, organization, but most of what is, arrived at is not legally binding as such. So members subscribe to it willingly. So you can say the Commonwealth has what you call the moral authority on issues, but even the charter is not legal. It is what shared values and aspiration that members have agreed, to place on themselves. Therefore, the secretariat is it has a very small secretariat. So it doesn't have this expansive thing like you have the AU and the rest of them.
That's right. I'm wondering, the reason I asked that question for Ambassador Oyatero to clarify is, it harks back to the views often expressed by some commentators as to the effectiveness, ultimately, of the Commonwealth. Ambassador Lolo, I'm coming to you now to say, look, you have seen that in the course of the new Commonwealth since 1949, in the last couple of decades, for instance, a number of international institutions have reformed themselves. And member states in some of these other international institutions feel a greater affinity, AU, for instance, ECOWAS. If you were to go to Southern Africa, it would be SADC, and several others. What's your take on this? In terms of reforms, yes, if we have the Commonwealth Charter of 2012, what more does the Commonwealth need to do in order to be, one, more visible, and secondly, to have greater affinity just beyond the shared colonial past or shared interests that some of the new three members have?
Well, I think, Kingsley, the whole debate is not only limited to the Commonwealth. It's the same debate about the United Nations, whether it is effective and relevant or not. But the dividing line really is enforcement capacity. Any organization or institution that does not have an enforcement capacity will always be dogged by this issue of relevance. So for the Commonwealth, yes, it is good that they have gone through their reform. Earlier I had said they need to be more proactive. They need also to be more timely. But the contribution of the Commonwealth, like Ambassador Oyatero mentioned, on the issue of governance cannot be taken for granted. And we need governance today, because some of the problems we have are issues of governance, and they go around the globe. The second thing would be, how do we create opportunities for the downtrodden? It's also the issue of creating opportunities. And it is here that you see the Commonwealth coming in to offer that type of opportunity. The world is shrinking and retreating. We need to open them more, but in an orderly fashion. And that you have 53 countries meeting every 2 years at the level of heads of state and government, and annually at the level of foreign ministers, plus other platforms that they use. I believe that if they articulate their voices better and package their message in a manner in which the world will key into it, then we will cease to question what they are doing, because these same member states, when they meet as Commonwealth heads of state and government, would be the same governments that will go, for instance, to WTO and so differ that you wonder if there is any bond between them. So I'm advocating coherence, I'm advocating consistency, and I'm also advocating accountability to the people. If these three come to bear, then I think we'll have a better Commonwealth.
All right, Ambassador Lolo, thank you very much. We've talked about good governance. We'll return to that shortly. I think the Harare Declaration of 1991 was the foundation of good governance, human rights, and other issues. Again, those were live issues at the time, because for us, in 1991, we were still under military rule, and a number of African states who are members of the Commonwealth, had issues with transition politics. But we have another guest who is joining us now from our Lagos Network studio. Also a familiar face on Good Morning Nigeria. We haven't had him for some time. Is Ambassador Ayo Olukomi. Olukomi, of course, is Nigeria's former High Commissioner to Australia. Australia is a member of the Commonwealth. Ambassador Olukomi, pleasure to have you on Good Morning Nigeria again.
Thank you, Kingsley. First, let me also say it's a pleasure to see my colleagues who we serve Nigerians together meritoriously. I'm talking about Ambassador Lolo as well as Ambassador Akin Oyateru. It's good to see you on Good Morning Nigeria today. Thank you very much for having me.
All right, let's hear from you straight away. You're very passionate about climate change. You're also very familiar with a number of the issues pertaining to the Commonwealth. One of the first questions we asked your other colleagues here had to do with the fact whether or not the Commonwealth would appear to be waking up rather late to some other pressing global issues that impact directly on the 53 members that make up the Commonwealth. Issues such as migration, issues such as dealing with our youth, climate change, migration, security, and lately now, global trade.
I don't think the Commonwealth is waking up late. I think it's always ever been there. And if you look at the thematic focus of this year, we're talking about the question of towards a common future. It's a reflection of the fact that the Commonwealth is always very, very relevant. And it's the 4 areas it's looking at is a prosperous future, a fairer future, a more secure future. These are key issues which are continuously be on the card. And I think what is happening is that the Commonwealth itself is certainly living up to it. And if you tie it up back to where it started, it says that towards a prosperous future and our common future. If you remember the fact that the report of the World Commission on Environment and Development, 1988, was talking about our common future, which means that this is still quite relevant as far as the issue is concerned. But beyond that, let me say that if you look at the various areas, our prosperous future, a fairer future, reminds you of the issue of you campaign in poetry, but you govern in prose. That you campaign in poetry, you govern in prose. When the Commonwealth is saying is that we're looking forward to a more secure future, at the end of the day, the nitty-gritty is that what are the issues which we're talking about? The secure future implies security. A prosperous future has to do with the question and issue which Ambassador Akin Oyateru as well as Ambassador Lulu has mentioned. And I cast my mind back to 2011. CHOGM 2011, which was held in Perth. And luckily myself and Ambassador Akin Oyateru and Ambassador Lulu also played a role in this particular area. CHOGM 2011 was also a very important aspect as far as the Commonwealth itself is concerned. And to also think of the fact that this particular Commonwealth is focusing on the youth. On the youth. And I think that means that the Commonwealth is, of course, like I said, it's always been alive to it. It's always a question of emphasis here and there.
All right, thank you very much, Ambassador Olukomi. Let's come back again to our studios, but let's indicate that we're already having reactions from our viewers. This is a very interesting topic to our viewers, and we have some tweets already. We will take those tweets now before we go around the next set of questions to the ambassadors. Ashil?
Yes, and the first one I have here is from Mutana Farouk. Nigeria has gained monumental foreign respect under the Buhari administration. Therefore, Nigeria should act as a mouthpiece of Africa to table the imminent problems of the continent, especially the insecurity menace. Nigeria has to explore the advantage of gathering for good.
And this is Dele Jack Solomon tweeting, at CHOGM 2018 will implore President Muhammadu Buhari to take the summit as an opportunity to put forward Nigeria's interest on trade and prosperity, security, terrorism, diplomacy, immigration, climate change, and common values, and then chart the Commonwealth's policy priorities for the future.
Our Odogene sees an advantage for Nigeria post-Brexit. He says, post-Brexit, Nigeria will be valuable on the continent of Africa. We should now have relatively balanced trade.
Festus Akimboyewa tweets, CHOGM will be viewed through the lens of Brexit, which presents great opportunity for members of the old empire who are underlisted trading partners to renew ties with the UK. Nigeria should use the opportunity to campaign for her concerns like the Chad Basin crisis, security, and anti-corruption.
And Mike Anyako's tweet says it differently, talking about the Brexit. Call it pre-Brexit or post-Brexit. It's purely and basically internal affairs of Britain, and that does not concern the affairs of other member states of Commonwealth. Britain as a country has chosen something good for them. It is left for others to chart a new course that suits them.
Sam Unna tweets, Commonwealth nations meeting seems to be very important now because of Brexit. Trust the whites. They are looking for serious business partners and nothing more.
And Mutana Farouk says, I urge Nigeria to reject in totality a call from Theresa May about the embracement of gay marriage. I hope it is not an agenda for discussion in the gathering, because if it is, the gathering will be razzle-dazzle.
Sani Michael Omakoji tweets, as President Muhammadu Buhari advances for more UK companies, advocates for more UK companies in Nigeria, it's also important for him to tell the world some of those countries that are hesitating to repatriate Nigeria's looted funds. Well, those are the tweets that we have in the meantime. So that's two issues that are pertinent in the tweets. The one has to do with Brexit, and then of course the other has to do with the same-sex marriage, which we read in our newspaper review. We had taken on the Commonwealth some weeks ago on the occasion of the Commonwealth Day, and we had the British High Commissioner who was our guest in the studios. I would like to revisit that question to say there are some commentators who are saying that, look, in terms of global trade and therefore the concerns for Britain, which is currently the chair of the Commonwealth, and obviously you've had the titular head ever since, that it would appear that this is a campaign for Britain to scramble for new trading partners on account of Brexit. What's your take on this, Ambassador Yatero?
Well, I don't think so. If Britain were still in the EU, we still have trade links with Britain. I'm always very amused when countries are fighting for their own national interest and other people complain that they are pursuing their national interest. That's what they ought to do. We should determine how best we're going to seize the opportunity of Brexit. Britain will have to chart a course that, suits its own national interest. Nigeria, like I said yesterday, should actually have a short and medium-term plan on how we're going to engage Britain, Brexit. Look at it this way. Britain is the 5th largest economy in the world, the 2nd largest in Europe. So it is a big player, whether it is in or outside the EU. Britain is the top, trading partner with Nigeria, non-oil, as of today. So Britain is important to us, whether they're in EU or they're not at the EU. What we must do is get our own act together and put up a sort of strategy that serves our own national interest and optimizes our economic link with them. And what I would say is this. Britain may trade with the rest of the Commonwealth is just 10%. You can compare that with 50% with the EU. So even when Britain is out of the EU, it's still a major player in Europe. People are saying, okay, probably they're trying to scramble to replace lost trade with Commonwealth, but I say it's 10%. Therefore, that is not going to happen very quickly. In fact, projection is that maybe post-Brexit, by 2020, trade with Commonwealth will increase about 17%, coming to about almost $700 billion US. So that's a huge market. Nigeria should then determine how it is going to engage, the UK, particularly a non-oil, sector.
Ambassador Lola, yes, we will stick to that. Post-Brexit, what are the stakes for African countries in the Commonwealth, especially Nigeria?
Well, the stakes depend on how you look at Africa itself. Africa is the last and only continent to go through the Green Revolution. And because we've not gone through the Green Revolution, we are still trailing behind the other continents. So I look at Africa as having a combination of issues. You cannot narrow it to one. Migration. Who is leading in migration? It is Africa. Youth unemployment, I believe compared to Asia, in terms of numbers and the challenges, ours would be higher because you have to bring in relativism to play, where you do have, like in China, X number of people that are unemployed, their opportunities are better and higher than the same number in Africa. And the third thing that I want to bring out about Africa is that of the security challenges today that we face, they are most acute on our continent. You do have how many countries today in Africa that are almost becoming extinct? We don't talk about Central Africa. We don't talk about Libya and a host of others. Look at Mali, just in our backyard here. And these are the things that we expect the Commonwealth to respond to. However, it is also a question of how we package our demands and take to the Commonwealth. But above all, can the Commonwealth really address these issues for us on the continent? I go back to what we had agreed earlier, that it provides that platform to articulate your views and be heard. Equally, it gives you an avenue to reach out to others as a group. This is what they do very well when they meet at the United Nations. But let me end on this issue about Africa, that it is us on the continent that must fix our problems. Others outside will not do it for us.
Thank you, Ambassador. And joining us now on to discuss CHOGM 2018 further is Professor Chudi Wazirike, who is a former member of the House of Representatives and an internal affairs analyst. Thanks for joining us, Prof.
Thank you very much.
And Prof, before you joined us, we've been talking about the relevance of the Commonwealth in today's world. We spoke about the state of the world today, and then the state of the Commonwealth nations vis-a-vis African countries, which Nigeria is part of, which is more important to us. We want you to speak to that. Let's hear your views on that.
Well, yes. Thank you very much. Well, we can clearly see that in a world of nations, it's not about to make friends, to be part of interest groups, formal or informal, and especially trading groups that could clearly help one's prosperity. In today's world, the name of the game is economic diplomacy. The name of the game for Africa is really economic growth at a massive level. The situation where at this point we're growing at, let us say, 2 to 3%. We ought to be growing at 13%. So the more friends we have, the better. The Commonwealth group of nations consists of, represents 30% of the global population with 2.5 billion, and consists of perhaps up to 15%, 40 to 15% of global trade. So it is fairly significant. We tend to focus on Britain, but there are other Commonwealth countries with whom very profitable relationships can be developed. India is one. We can do far more with India. Australia, Canada, we're already doing that. I'm not saying we're not doing that, but very clearly all eyes tend to be on Britain. So it is at that level. It's a group with non-binding decisions, but very clearly symbolic. But it's the kind of symbolism that can be converted to Nigeria's advantage, depending on how we play the game. So I think it's relevant.
Ambassador Wazirike, thank you very much. Just before we will come back to you shortly, let's return to Ambassador Olukomi, who is at Lagos Network Studios. We're still on Brexit. Your ambassador brother, Oyateru, says that, yes, there's nothing wrong with Britain, seeking to advance its national interest in the post-Brexit era, trying again to woo members of the Commonwealth in order to boost its trade amongst Commonwealth members outside of the EU. And they then calls for a Nigerian response on the basis of a properly considered strategy. In your opinion, what is it that Nigeria ought to watch out for, listen for at this Commonwealth summit? Is it an opportunity or an occasion, rather, to be making commitments or getting into all kinds of concession agreements?
Well, thank you very much. Quickly, I think we must remember that the Commonwealth meeting has about 4 different folk areas. We have the CBF, the Commonwealth Business Forum, we have the People's Forum, we have the Youth Forum, and we also have the Women's Forum. It is left for us to determine what are the strategic focus. I remember 2011 in Australia, CHOGM 2011. At the business forum, one of the areas we talked about was the mining sector. Because of the experiences of Australia, we thought we could learn from. So we went on to have an MOU between Nigeria and Australia in context of that how can we support the Nigerian mining sector. That MOU focused on mining, agri, financial services, as well as energy. And out of that, we were able to support the Nigerian mining sector. As I speak to you today, we also have the 2016 mining roadmap. So what we did was to learn and use the Commonwealth CHOGM at that particular period to also see how we can support the mining sector. And I'm very happy that that is going on today. Now, for this particular CHOGM, it's going to have a strong youth focus. And I think the question or challenges of youth is very important. And I'd like to tie this up to Next Generation Nigeria, which looked at a report which looked at Nigeria, the Nigerian youth, that the youth will be the future. It's going to be the future oil for Nigeria. And it looked at Nigeria through a demographic lens, that what we do with our youth and how we help and educate and prepare them to take over the future is a key issue. So there's a tie-up between what I refer to, the Next Generation Nigerian report, which was released in 2010, and the question is, what are we doing with it? And this particular CHOGM, which is looking at, we have a strong youth focus. So my take is that this is a very important aspect of CHOGM. And for us in Nigeria, the population has just been released, 198 million, we said. We have a youth bulge. So what happens is that the Commonwealth delegation, Nigeria's Commonwealth delegation, at this session of the Commonwealth, should look at the various areas which Commonwealth is, the program of action in terms of how do we prepare our youth so that we can take on the question and the issue of employment and also help as far as those programs are concerned. Like I said, you campaign in poetry, but you govern in prose. That's the same from the late Mario Cuomo. So it is left for us, especially in terms of the outcome of the Youth Forum, what is the program of action Commonwealth 2018 is going to have, so that we can key onto it. The civil society at the level of the People's Forum, this is one of the forum for Commonwealth as well. So we can have a strong focus. Like my brother, Ambassador Akin Oyateru said, indeed, it is when you go to the market, you focus on what you want to buy. You don't listen to the noise of the crowd. You want to buy Gary, you want to buy jams, those are the things you focus on. So these are the issues we should focus on. And of course, not to forget the question of the future, because this Commonwealth is talking about a more secure future. And also, of course, Professor Chudi Wazurike, it's nice to see you. I'm sure you can key into these issues in terms of raising a new generation of Nigerians, since you are involved in that as well. Long story short, Commonwealth 2016 and 2018 is has a strong focus on youth. Let us also see what we can do with that. And especially against the background of the fact that Next Generation Nigeria report, I think this is the time we should bring it back again and dust it up and see what we can do as far as raising a future generation that will take Nigeria to that glorious end.
All right, Ambassador Olukami, thank you very much. Back again to Professor Wazurike. Professor Wazurike, I would like you to speak some more on one of the areas of focus that we're going to have at this Commonwealth, the youth. I mean, the other guests have also talked about it. We have a growing youth population all around the world, but for us it's particularly significant. Now, against the backdrop of the latest population projection figures, 198 million, but we also know that some 30% at least of Nigerians are illiterate.
No, absolutely. This is, I just delivered a convocation lecture last week at the Federal University of Technology, and I focused pretty much on the youth as not just generation next, as we tend to say sometimes, but actually in Africa for us at this point as generation hope. In the sense that I would consider the current youth population as perhaps, as the ambassador said, one of the most talented, far more importantly, one of the most globally wired. We have issues here. I looked at the demographics as released by the National Population Council that the ambassador just mentioned, and it's really frightening. There are people who think that huge populations are a huge advantage. They are also a huge problem. 30% unemployment is putting it nicely. There is also at least 30 other percent underemployment. You know, there's unemployment, there's underemployment. So we have a problem. But it is a youthful group that can be turned to advantage, largely because, and I define the youth as people under the age of 35, between at least 18 to 35. This is a traveled group. It is a much more patriotic group than is often given credit for. It is a far better educated youth group than ever before. But in my books, it is also a technologically savvy group that can roam the world, think big, do bigger things, and create employment here over the next several years. But what is always missing is the underlying philosophy of governance, the whole national question, the whole issue of who we are and where we're going. In other words, our own Pan-Africanism, for instance, how we are re-articulating it in Nigerian, and how is it playing, both on the continent as well as on the Commonwealth. I was a youth leader, student leader in my own time, and that's what he's referring to. And we have to prepare the way for this generation hope. I think clearly that the unemployment issue should be robustly tackled. I think that is what the government and we, the adults, owe our youths. It is really terrible to have unemployed youth, and that's one reason why we have all these problems. So I will say very clearly that if we want the youth to be part of this future we're dreaming of, job creation should be key, but also we ought to give the youth a chance to succeed by turning their minds towards the global opportunities represented by the Commonwealth, but also by the common thread coming up in Africa. On a final note, I think that it is also from Nigeria that a very remarkable revolution on a continental level is coming, the Tuni Elumelu Foundation style drive towards mass entrepreneurship. The hope, quite simply, is that what Tuni is doing may result over the next 10 years in a number of techno-entrepreneurial giants from the youth of today. So they're pretty much the future. I think they're a lucky generation in a way, in the sense that even though many may not say it, but they have the greatest opportunity in the sense that they're globalized, they have the tools of the trade, they're techno-savvy, and once they get onto a philosophy of being, so to say, that you can call it ideology if you want, that can drive them, then the result will be marvelous, just like in India.
All right, Professor Wazuruke, thank you very much. You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we of course continue the conversation with our four guests.
If you hear a bomb explosion or gunshots of an active shooter, that might be a terror attack. At such times, always remember 3 action words: run, hide, report. Don't try to run towards the terror scene to save the situation, because there might be a second bomb blast or another attack. Run far away and take cover. Make sure you are safe first. Yes, it is in our nature to sympathize over the hurt, but remember, only trained personnel can help in such situations. When in a secured environment, promptly call relevant authorities and help will come. For anonymous reporting, call 09630-3250-5 or 0813-2222-106. If you see something, say something. Nigeria, unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Thanks for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria. And we've been talking about CHOGM 2018, where the main issues have been trade, security, sustainability, fairness, as in the areas of democracy, good governance, and so many other issues, gender issues, which we'll come to very soon. But in the meantime, we have more tweets coming in. And of course, you know that our address is at NTAGMN. Sonny Michael Omakoji, CHOGM 2018 should be used by Nigeria and the rest of African countries to evaluate the input of Commonwealth in the African region. Is the institution being fair to us? Is it not time to Africa-dex it? That's a new one. What is still keeping us together?
Well, of course, the ambassadors have responded to that to indicate, the value of the Commonwealth, not just to African countries, but to other members in general. But pertinent question is raised there. Clifford Agugwesi has this tweet. British Prime Minister Theresa May should keep whatever aid she has in stock to dispense to countries that embrace gay marriages because it is not welcome in Nigeria.
And Domogbolahan Babs, CFR, says no takeaway will be as germane as the security of member nations. The takeaway should first be how member nations can help secure countries undergoing security challenges. A peaceful nation guarantees steady progress and development.
Victor Ohio Suoma tweets, the takeaways for Nigeria from the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting should be in the areas of security, economy, and anti-corruption. We need inflow of investment to reduce unemployment. We will not be adversely affected by Brexit, as we already have bilateral agreements with Britain.
The prospects of Chogom, that's from Mutana Farouk, may avail Nigeria and Africa in general the kinetic opportunity to redefine their tried economic policies. Whatever communication intelligence Nigeria seems to gain in that gathering would perhaps be beneficial to us, no matter how minute it is.
Musa Jida has this one-liner. Commonwealth meeting is more of a festival than economic value. Really?
And we'll find that out from our guest.
Yes.
Dele Jackson writes in again. He says the Commonwealth needs to reach out more openly to its vigorous civil society organizations for inspiration and support. If the goal is to make the charter commitments a reality, Good Governance Initiative will help to galvanize the Nigeria to become a beacon of hope for the League.
And then we have this from Mike Ayankwa. It says, what really are the gains of being a member of the Commonwealth for Nigeria? Absolutely nothing. That's what he's tweeting. It may be hard to believe, but empirically, nothing to show in terms of beneficial relationships. I see the 2018 meeting of the heads of government of member nations as another talk show. It's just, again, we ask the question, really? If you've been listening to what our guests have been saying, Ambassador Akin Oyetoro, Ambassador Bulus Lolo, Professor Wazirike, and Ayo Lukomi, they've all responded to this. For instance, Ambassador Lukomi was talking about the outcome of the 2011 Chogom meeting with regard to mining relationships and agriculture and financial services with Australia and other countries.
I have the last tweet for now from Clifford Agugwesi. Viewed with the prism of ICT, I would say the Commonwealth has been active on agenda setting via the Commonwealth Telecommunications Organization, CTO.
All right. Now, we understand that we've been able to establish links with London. A guest is joining us from there right now. You can see it's a familiar face to Nigerians. Femi Adesina is a special advisor to President Muhammadu Buhari on media and publicity. Mr. Adesina, pleasure to have you on Good Morning Nigeria. And straight away, before you respond, tell us something about the mood, of course, around the president and the delegates of Nigeria to the ongoing Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting.
Thank you and good morning. Well, all is set, and in a short while, the ball is set rolling. This morning, the president is first going to have a private meeting with Royal Dutch Shell coming up quite shortly. And after that, he is going to attend a business session, a business forum of the Commonwealth. A lot of Nigerian businessmen are in town, and that promises to be a good setting to unfold and to unfold all that is happening in Nigeria and opportunities, not only just for Nigerian businessmen, but for the rest of the world, particularly members of Commonwealth countries. And later in the evening, the Chogom will be officially flagged off with a welcoming dinner for the visiting heads of states. I think all is set to go well. A number of ministers are here, Minister of Youth and Sports, Minister of Women Affairs, Trade and Investment, Budget and Planning, and some others, because there are going to be different sessions talking about issues that concern those ministers. So they are going to be advocating for Nigeria in those sessions.
Mr. Additional, the president had a high-level talk with British Prime Minister Theresa May. Can you tell us the outcome of that meeting?
Yes, it was indeed a very, very good meeting. Everything went smoothly. The key issues that concern Nigeria were brought up. Security, economic development, migration, recharge of the Lake Chad, and so many others. Our president brought up those matters, and Prime Minister May responded to all of them. And, you know, the theme of this Commonwealth meeting is towards a common future. And in that meeting, you will see that what resonated through it was how the world can pull together, particularly members of the Commonwealth nations. It was a very good meeting. And the president also asked for more investments in Nigeria. He cited the example of Cadbury, Unilever, who had been in Nigeria going to 100 years. And even at Nigeria's trying period, during the Civil War, they still kept faith. So he asked for more of such investments in Nigeria, and he used the opportunity to tell the Prime Minister about the successes of his administration, particularly in agriculture and some other areas. The Prime Minister commended him on the economy and told him, I'm aware that elections are coming next year, still keep an eye on the economy. And that was when the president made the remark that, yes, in Nigeria, a lot of politicians are preoccupied with next year's elections, but what matters more to him is security and the economy.
All right, Mr. Additional, tell us something. Do you have a sense of the level of attendance by heads of government or heads of state at this Commonwealth heads of government meeting? Do you have a sense of who else might be around?
Well, what I have heard is that 54 heads of Commonwealth countries are expected. But until the event officially kicks off with the dinner later tonight, you may not be able to know. But from all appearances, it appears that it's going to be well subscribed to.
You've also talked about the number of Nigerian ministers who were present. Talked about budget and planning, women affairs, and youth, and trade and investment. Tell us, particularly for the youth, because the guests with us here in the studios as well as at our Lagos Network Center have had the critical factor that the youth have to play. What is it that Nigeria will be looking at for, or will also be projecting? I know you're not the Minister of Youth Development, but what kind of issues would Nigeria be taking to the Commonwealth meeting with regard to the youth, for instance?
Yes, there is going to be what is called the Commonwealth Youth Forum today, before the official kickoff of the summit itself. There's a Commonwealth Youth Forum this morning, just as we also have the Commonwealth Business Forum, in which our president is expected to also meet and speak to those businessmen. So the Youth Forum is where the sports minister also will participate and then maybe share common issues with the rest of the ministers that are going to be there from Commonwealth countries. For instance, there is also a meeting of foreign ministers from the Commonwealth. So you have the relevant ministers attending such fora and representing their countries.
So what are the takeaways for Nigeria in all of this? What do you see Nigeria benefiting from this?
I didn't get that.
So what are the takeaways for Nigeria in all of this? At the end of the meeting, what would Nigeria be taking away as a country?
You know, summits like this is not something you get back home and as if you have gone to the market, you now begin to say, oh, I sold this and this is the profit I made. No. It's to engage with the rest of the country, take the concerns that are peculiar to your country to the international forum. And the returns are not usually immediate. It's not something you get home and say, okay, I took 50 naira goods to the market and I have sold 45 naira worth. No, the returns may not be immediate, but it will be continuous. Don't forget the theme of the summit, towards a common future. So it's all about the future, about security, about education, about migration, and all sorts of things, but targeting the future.
Femi, just before we let you go, you've, of course, been with the president at various summits on the African continent and elsewhere around the world. What are the positive sentiments that still attached to Mr. President and Nigeria?
The positive sentiments, you said?
Sentiments that still attach to the president and Nigeria.
Okay, yeah. For instance, at the bilateral meeting with the British Prime Minister, you could see that she was quite delighted that Nigeria was there and the Nigerian president was there. From the engagement, you could see that she had been following events closely in Nigeria. She even asked about the president's son. She said, "Oh, sorry about your son. I heard he was engaged in an accident. How is he doing now?" And the president assured her that he was well, that age was on his side, so he has recovered well. So you could see from the engagement that he follows Nigeria closely and keenly. And I think that is the sentiment in most parts of the world. Nigeria is keenly followed. Recall that sometime next week, our president will be meeting the American president. So it shows you that Nigeria is of interest to the rest of the world, and the vibes are good.
All right, Mr. Femi Adesina, Special Advisor to President Muhammadu Buhari on Media and Publicity, joining us via Skype from London. We understand you are off with Mr. President to some of his engagements right now, so we'll let you go. Thanks a lot for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria today.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, that's you listen to the man who's right there on the spot with Mr. President. Of course, he also responded to some of the questions shown about whether it was a mere talk show or whether it's relevant or otherwise. But one issue that would like us to touch on now is a statement attributed to the British Prime Minister Theresa May with regard to gay marriages. She's made a proposition to other Commonwealth members that still have it on their statute books that the law, according to her now, is anachronistic, that same-sex marriage should be the in thing. So some persons are asking, again, beginning with Ambassador Lolo, is the Commonwealth going to turn into a gay club?
Very unlikely, not when you have Nigeria as a member of the Commonwealth and a good number of other African countries. And generally on same-sex marriage, much as it is, quote and unquote, an emergent issue, but it is one that touches on the core values of people. And the good thing that I like about this debate in Nigeria is that it comes out on its own without manipulation. Elsewhere, you do find governments setting the tone and direction on public debate. But here is one. Without exception, Nigerians are united, or let me say, the majority of Nigerians are united in rejecting same-sex marriage as an abomination. And two, the way our law on this subject has been formulated, if there is any democracy anywhere in the world that believes in people having their say, this is one law that should enjoy acceptance and support as much and as long as it remains the law. Mindful of the fact that with time, if there is any reason to revisit the law, it will be revisited, such as in the provisions of what punishment to mete to people who are involved in this. But as to whether the Commonwealth will become a gay club or not in the immediate, not in the medium or the long term, do I see this as a prospect.
Ambassador Ettore, shall we then say that thank God that such propositions are not binding?
Yeah, I mean, thank God they're not binding, but I don't think they enjoy, popular support. I recall that the then host of CHOGM 2015 in Malta, Prime Minister Muscat, forced the issue on the agenda because the host country normally sets the agenda, have the privilege of setting this agenda, and the LBGT was an agenda that was forced in there. You have about 37 member states of the Commonwealth who still have, homosexuality as a crime on their statute books. And this is not going to go away anytime soon, at least not on the continent of Africa. So the thing is, yes, that was there, but it was trailed by a lot of controversy. The Malta conference was overshadowed by trying to force this issue, and many countries really, voiced their opposition. Britain, as the host of this year's CHOGM, has been under immense pressure from the LGBT group, to include this on the agenda like in Malta. But I know that the British government has been very wary to actually dig this on. In fact, tomorrow, the 19th, they're planning to picket Marlborough House, that's the Commonwealth Secretariat, to press this issue. Well, freedom of speech and freedom of association. But I don't think it's going to get anywhere anytime soon. It's a platform where you can raise issues and discourse. Debates, once they're healthy, the outcome is what matters.
All right, thanks. Professor Wazurike, what's your take on this? That's the gay perspective, quoted, of course, with some carrot by the British Prime Minister, that Britain will be willing to assist countries to help reform their laws, because those laws, according to her, even though they were inherited from the colonial era, they have become anachronistic. Is this something that is likely to fly, or something that should be torn down outright?
Well, at the minimum, it will be controversial. I think very clearly that the question of the human rights of gays as citizens, as human beings, should not be in question at all. But the whole notion of a right to be considered as married couples and so on is an issue. Already there's a law in Nigeria's books. I agree with the two ambassadors on the procedure and the process. If there's a need for amendment, that could be brought in over time. But the solid Nigerian sentiment is that this is an unnatural process that should not be forced down our throat, and that has been very consistent. The same thing in many other countries, as it were. If the Commonwealth takes a decisive position on this, it will be by the minority of mostly Western countries, Australia, Canada, and so on. West European countries have made their peace with this situation, but the rest of the world has not. To us, is a problematic proposition that goes into the whole question of the core of who we are. So here we are, that we affirm family values and stand on it.
Ambassador, look, Lagos, I'll be coming to you. Our other guests in the studio seem to believe that it's not going to fly. Even some of the tweets we've gotten from our viewers seem to agree with that. What's your take on it?
Oh, well, thank you very much. I think the issue is quite clear. For us, it's an abomination, the whole question of same-sex marriage. And you must put it in context of the whole push as far as women and men's human rights is concerned, in context of their sexual orientation. I was closely involved in this discussion of this issue way back, of course, from the UN Platform for Action, the Beijing +5, in terms of pushing the frontiers of women's human rights and the rights of the LGBT community, like Professor Wazurike said. But I think we've always been able to move forward. That, look, for us, the agenda is how do we reduce paternal mortality? How do we reduce child mortality? How do we reduce infant mortality? Usually in those discussions, which some of us have been engaged in as well, look, listen, these are the laws in your places. For us, the focus was we don't want women to die at birth. We don't want our children to die at birth. And these are the strategic areas of how to deal with this particular issue. I give you a good example of Australia. I served as ambassador in Australia, and I remembered when the ACT laws came in terms of same-sex marriage, first it was first defeated. But people said, well, we know what will happen subsequently. Long story short, Australia went ahead to go and legislate same-sex marriage. That is as far as they are concerned. We said, look, listen, for us, we have problem of electricity, energy, we have problems of development, infrastructure. Those are the areas we want to focus on. We also, of course, want to look at the whole question of women's rights. And that's why the Commonwealth Women's Forum, one of the very areas in terms of what should be the issues for us. The issues for us be the question of reduction of violence against women, education of the girl child, women's right as far as health, their health is concerned, breaking the glass ceilings. So we choose what we want to focus on. If the British says that, look, listen, what are you doing about same-sex marriage? For us, that is not the issue now. We don't want to concern ourselves with that. You guys have crossed the bridge. We also want to focus on that as well. I think that is the way we should take it in terms of we won't quarrel with them if that's the direction we want to go. But we know the direction we want to go as far as women is concerned. And that's why we should look at the outcome of the Women's Forum. What are the key issues? Just like other areas in terms of area of security. So I think it's quite clear. We should not agitate ourselves whether they are going along this way, but there's no way they can drag the entire Commonwealth and say, all of you should make arrangement to say that men will be marrying men and women should be marrying women in your places. We have a focus. What do? Domestic violence, education of the girl's child, more women in the boardroom. Those should be the focus. And I think that is the strategic way, especially a large number of us who have been on the multilateral front and in the area of gender and women development as well. I'm wearing a she tag, which is an indication of the fact that, listen, the question of gender advancement is not only for women alone, it's also for men in terms of orientating men to say that, to let men know that, look, listen, 50% of the population cannot be kept away. And I'm sure I'm happy that what is happening in Nigeria as far as this particular agenda itself is concerned. And before, as we run down to as well, I'm saying that the strategic focus, and I think Mr. Adesina also made mention of it, that the Youth Forum is going to be a very important forum. And I think one of the takeaways from us should be, what are we going to do as far as that is concerned? After this forum, this Commonwealth 2018, there will be programs and scholarship for education for young people. There will be skills development and vocational training. These are things which I think we know. So when the papers come back, let us pierce the corporate veil and see what are the program of action on ground as far as our youth activities are concerned. So civil society groups can, take advantage of it. Women's group can take advantage of it. The people themselves can take advantage of it, and OSCOF as well as businesses too as well. I think these are my comments as far as those things are concerned. Thank you.
And we have more tweets, and the first one I have here from Achilles Chute seems to be in support of what we've been talking about. What exactly is common about the Commonwealth? What development does it bring to nations in terms of ideas and support? Prime Minister Theresa May retold the story of imperialism when she began the campaign for same-sex marriage in Commonwealth of Nations while she is still married to a man. It is sad.
Clifford Agogoesi tweets, our youth don't want to be perceived as generation next, but generation now.
Commonwealth is a meaningless organization that benefits countries such as Canada. That's a tweet from Austin, and Australia and New Zealand. The remaining other countries are just making up numbers.
Sani Michael Makoji again has another 12. If Chogom 2018 is all about youth, what is the percentage of the youth attending this Chogom? It's not all about the youth, by the way. Youth is one of several issues that the Commonwealth is taking on. But it continues, how can they decide our fate on our behalf? It sounds hilarious and ironical in a way, and I think the narrative must change.
Adebayo Adeiga says Commonwealth needs to engage the youth in human capital needs, creating a program that will develop their skills and talent.
Mutana Farouk again. What are the prime objectives of the Commonwealth to liberate the member countries in Africa from economic bondage?
Chris Simeon says it's not just meeting every year. Commonwealth members don't enforce their words and what is contained in the Charter. Let Commonwealth nations feel the impact of the Commonwealth.
Now, within this, we have this from Volition Kotler. That's the Twitter handle that says Ambassador Lukome should tell us more as regards Australian partnership with Nigeria on mining. Was it done as a JV profit share, that's joint venture profit share, or training alone? We need self-sustenance policy that is indigenously led. We must stop being profit machines for foreign interests through exploitation of our national wealth. I think we would like to refer Kotler to the mining sector roadmap that has been designed by the Ministry of Mines and Solid Minerals 2016. You have the details all of that there. with regard to your questions.
There's some more strong emotions coming in through our tweets today. Professor Mojid Alabi says, the Commonwealth is nothing but a vestigial remnant of an empire that no longer serves any useful purpose.
Our dog has another tweet. They can elevate the youth by giving them space to now participate in any sector. They'll be able to learn on the job and in the process have personal capacity development.
And Chibuzo Jonathan says, Commonwealth or no Commonwealth, since we became member of the group, how is the Commonwealth helping to improve our country?
And then the last one from Dele Jack Solomon said the Commonwealth's 53 member countries have a combined population of more than 2 billion, actually over 2.4 billion, of which more than 60% are under 30 years of age, meaning member nations' youths are the live wire of the organization. Thus, CHOGM should continue to support the effective participation of youth in development processes and promote their engagement at all levels of decision-making. All right, those are the tweets that we have.
Thank you very much. As we're rounding off, Ambassador, I would like to come to you. I won't go without talking about gender issues. Right. Prime Minister Theresa May announced a £7 million initiative and what she calls She Trades Commonwealth. There's a focus on women now to empower them. What's your take on that?
It's a good one.
Okay.
And generally, when you mainstream gender into your development program, you are better for it, because you cannot do without bringing to bear all the potentials and the resources that you have. And for me, I see gender as an issue that has become global since 1995 when we had the summit in China. But the challenge for most countries, not just in Nigeria, but globally, very, very few, perhaps Rwanda is the example that I will cite, where they have tried to deliberately go for gender parity. If you go to the Rwandan National Assembly today, I think you have more women than men in it. And that's a very good example. For us, we're still grappling with the issue. We should take advantage of it and be more sensitive.
Ambassador Oyatero, your take on this, and more particularly the point that the other ambassador brothers have also touched on. How do we, at the end of a meeting of this nature, drill down all of this, cascade it to our national circumstance?
Yeah, it's a matter of taking the plan of action and the outcome document and decide which one is it that will actually suit our own purpose. People have been asking, what is it that we're getting from the Commonwealth? What is it that we want from the Commonwealth? That should be the question. When you're going for a meeting, you should actually target what objective and national interest you are going to perform. It's a platform. It's like a clean slate. You decide what you want to write out of it and what you want to take out of it. So this time around, I would say when the CBF, as the Commonwealth Business Forum, the Women's Forum, the Youth Forum, and then and then the People's Forum will look at the outcome document and decide which one suits our own particular need and use it. The Commonwealth, like other international organizations, the UN, they do not bequest, they don't bestow things on us. We are the ones who will have to use them to our own advantage.
All right, thank you very much. Professor Wazirike, your closing thoughts on all of this. After the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, what should we look forward to, or what should we do?
Well, the Commonwealth is clearly an agenda-setting forum. I think very clearly there are issues at the cultural level, at the economic level, at the level of youths, business forums, and the last issue we're talking about on gender, which I think is extremely important to re-echo what the ambassadors have also said. There's no question that unless we mainstream gender thinking and generalization in all we do, we have a problem. As a matter of fact, Ambassador Bulus, apart from Rwanda, another country that has done fairly well with gender upliftment is really South Africa. 43% of all appointments in South Africa go to women and so on. And many of the Nordic countries, Holland, Denmark, and so on, have been ruled for years by women prime ministers. And as you know very well, if ever there was a small hint of paradise on earth, the Scandinavian countries are it. They are Human Development Index is simply the best and has been consistent for the past 30 years. Very clearly, this is a very useful discussion in the sense that, as Ambassador Lukome has so eloquently outlined, there are quite a number of things that are being done on the youth arena. The question is, how do we, from a policy direction, enter all this into the calculus? I will clearly say that the answer lies with Parliament. The National Assembly.
Thank you very much, Prof.
Yes.
We will need to go at this point.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
problem.
And we'd like to say thank you to all our guests. Ambassador Bulus Lolo, retired Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, thank you for joining us. Professor Chudi Wazirike, thank you very much for your thoughts. And Ambassador Ayolu Komi, who joined us from Lagos. Mr. Femi Adesina joined us from London. And Ambassador Akin Oyateru has also been here with us. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Thank you. Now we'll go to sports. Now let's join our sports desk for the package.